G'day and welcome to Insights and Storytellings with me, Moon Willow. I realise it's been several days since I've sat down to do this, and that's been for various reasons, which I won't bore you with. But the main one is I've been resting, we'll say that, and I suppose struggling in a way, having enforced rest. But hey, um, it's a bit like falling off a log. Um, falling off a log. Anyway, so it's a bit like falling down and getting yourself back up again. So I'm putting this out here tonight and hoping that something comes through for all of us. I really appreciate those of you that are persevering with me and watching this on a regular basis. So with that in mind, I'm going to see which crystal sort of comes out for us tonight, and see which chakra would like speaking to. And it is solidite tonight, so the throat chakra. And I think that some of it is how do we speak our truth in such an ever-changing environment. Although to be fair, for the past coming up for a year now, the mainstream media, and there's been this really huge drive to follow one particular storyline, and it has varying parts that keep changing on a regular basis, and it's very difficult to find our authenticity, our authentic truth, our authentic voice in amidst of such a loud noise, from my perspective. And there are a lot of different truths and a lot of different explanations out there that I find really difficult to discern what the truth underlying actually is, because there's so many different parts to this. There's so many different weavings, and narratives going off that it's hard to steer. I'm finding it hard to steer my own course amongst it, especially when those that I love really don't want to hear something different from me. So I think that's partly why the throat chakra is sort of coming up at the moment, is that in amidst all of this, it's very hard to hear our own voice, let alone being able to speak our own truth in certain situations. And then the underlying narrative. So I know that many a time when the throat chakra comes up, I've spoken about our thought processes and the words that we use towards ourselves internally, around whether we're good enough, whether what we have to say is actually valid, whether we're going to hurt somebody else's feelings, or have our own hurt is in that particular breath as well. That if we're going against certain belief systems that are very ingrained, especially when it comes to family narratives or societal narratives, that it's very difficult to go against those. And it may be that in the moment of ourselves, that in our own space, in our own bubble, as it were, we understand why we've come to the conclusions we've come to, why it's authentic to us, why we feel really connected with that particular storyline, that when that's challenged, there is a lot of emotion attached to it, and it's almost like for some people in some conversations, we end up going backwards in a way. And by that I mean we end up back in a previous storyline or a previous upbringing and dialogue, and it's hard to shift that dynamic. It's hard for that other to actually bear witness that we have changed, that we have grown, that we are actually using reasoning, that it's not just knee-jerk assumptions, that actually we've done our research, that we have looked behind the veil of mainline media and come to our conclusions based on fact and based on a truth that resonates for us. And it's hard to remain in relationship with those that can't see that we have grown, that we're not just little children throwing our dummy out, throwing a spat, that actually we have, through reasoned logic, come to a conclusion that fits for us. So that's partly what I feel is around this particular chakra. And it's really hard to navigate the world that we're living in at the moment. It really feels like it, and there's a lot of information being spread out there that may not feel right. And as I say, it's really hard to hold that without the internal dialogue interfering and intervening at the same time. So it's how do we support our throat? How do we support our own narrative? Making sure that we reach out to those that are prepared to listen to us. They don't have to agree with us, but are prepared to listen to us fully and recognize that it is a difficult time that we are trying to navigate at the moment. And it's also hard, as well, as more information comes to the surface, not to crow as well. And it isn't about that for me. It's about holding firm and holding on whilst we're being tossed about in a world of smoke and mirrors and misinformation and partial information, partial truth. And sometimes it's the partial truths that are even more difficult to argue against, and ending up back again and again in a situation that feels like there's no escape, there's no way forward, there's no way to breathe. And it really feels very oppressive at the moment, and that inability to breathe, inability to find that space, makes it more awkward. And it's almost like this pressure to conform, this pressure to buy into something that doesn't feel right for the sake of holding relationships with others that you may not want to lose. So yeah, I'm going to see what cards come out within this as well. And see if I can find where else this story is taking us at the moment. I'll split the cards. A bit fumbly tonight. So the three cards are key, boat, and a road. I feel that the key always is to find our own truth. and really go inwards and not disregard the information that's out there by any stretch of the imagination, but try and look at it clearly and cleanly and be aware of agendas that are behind some of the information that's put forward, and really try and discern what feels right for ourselves, and being highly aware that that may actually be incredibly different to those that are around us, and that's okay. The key to our own path is actually our own voice, and having that internal connection, that connection to earth and source, and have that inner knowing that our voices are very powerful, which is why more often than not, those that are fearful of our truth in many a relationship would like to close us down, would like to shut us off, because they don't want us to realize and appreciate that we have a lot of power in our voice. And when our voice matches our inner dialogue, being aware of where that dialogue comes from, whether that actually truly is ours or does that come from somewhere else, is that a preconceived idea that doesn't actually belong to us in the first place, really sifting through that and getting a clear understanding of where we've taken on that information. How is that halting us, or how is that helping us to grow? Because as we start to really connect with our under communication, with our verbal communication, our non-verbal communication, as that starts to align completely, there is an incredible power in there. When we realize our sovereignty, when we realize that we have the freedom to choose how we respond, how we react, how we vocalize, how we're experiencing our world, that's incredibly powerful. And it frees up our voice to actually say our truth. And that merges in with others with similar truths. But it also shines a light through the deception and through the smoke and mirrors. We actually have the ability to clear the path ahead of us and cleanse the path ahead of us so that we can actually walk in more certainty, more alignment, more connectiveness. So going into the ship, the key there is, again, that we are the ones captaining our own boats. The ship is our body and the captaincy is our soul. And aligning that and stepping into our ability to navigate the world around us, the rough, turbulent sea, we can find our path forward. We may be blinded at times by very thick fog that we can't really see, but if we've got our headlights on, we'll be able to discern enough of the path ahead that we're not putting ourselves at risk, that we can actually give ourselves enough warning to travel forward safely. But recognizing that it needs to be us that's steering, that's us in the driver's seat, that we're not putting it elsewhere, that we're not regurgitating what somebody else is saying for the sake of it, that we actually truly feel that we understand that sometimes we don't always have the information, all of the information, but the information we have comes from being alert and aware. And we can navigate our own ship, that we have our own anchor point within, and we can actually hold that through the most stormy and turbulent seas. that we can connect with earth underneath our feet, and she will continue to support us, nourish us, give us that energy to continue going forward, that we have the ability to unlock the steering wheel to actually travel further forward. Which brings me into the road. And it is finding our path, clearing our path ahead, seeing the nuances of the information given to us by other people. They may not realize or recognize that they have an agenda, but most people do. Even I have an agenda. I have an agenda to actually navigate this world to the best of my ability and be as connected with the earth around me as possible. That is my agenda. One of my agendas is not to do hurt or harm to others, but to try and be the best that I can without hurting other people as I move forward. We all have an agenda. Some people's agendas are hidden, others aren't. And it's getting really connected within ourselves to understand our own path, but equally knowing that we are the ones choosing our path. We can put blame externally that we have no choice, we have no decisions, but that is not a truth. The truth is that we are sovereign, the truth is that we have free will, and we have the ability to choose the manner in which that we walk our path. There may be limitations on that, but how we approach it is up to us. How we choose to allow it to impact us is up to us. So it's taking responsibility. It's taking responsibility for our voice and how we voice ourselves, how we present ourselves, how we speak to everything in the world. How we speak to the earth underneath our feet, how we speak to the birds, how we speak to everything. Which reminds me, last night I was outside and I saw a fox in the distance and I called to it. And it stopped and it looked back at me, which was absolutely beautiful. And we stood there for a good couple of minutes, just looking at each other, neither taking a step closer nor further away, but just recognizing that each of us was inhabiting the world at the same time. And then the fox went off on its own business. But if I hadn't have called out to it, it wouldn't have stopped, it wouldn't have acknowledged me. And that was a special moment for me. So it is recognizing the power of our own voices and how we use that, and how we can continue to grow and respect the world around us and each other. Our words can hurt another, but equally they can soothe. We have got power in our voices, and we need to be aware of how powerful they can be. But how we navigate the world around us, how we navigate relationships, when to say something, when not to say something, how we actually express ourselves whilst maintaining our authentic self. But the only way we can do that is actually giving ourselves time and space to truly understand where our authentic narrative is coming from, where we're actually absorbing it from, and how do we navigate forward in that. So anyway, I'm hoping this is making sense to somebody out there. I'm not entirely sure, but within the idea of the voice, I'm going to see which sound actually comes to support our throat this evening. Thank you very much for joining me. I do appreciate it. I'm not sure when I'll be back. Bear with me. But in the meantime, take care of yourselves. Love you all. Bye for now.